Hi everyone and welcome. Following our previous updates, we want to share a further factual development in the situation involving Buy2Sell, related entities, and the wider public-facing business network that appears around them. This update is based on documents in our possession, public corporate records, website analysis, and the visible public footprint of connected business entities. At the beginning, this looked like a single commercial dispute. After further review, the concern is broader. The issue no longer appears limited to one company name, one agreement, or one contact point. The public record points to a wider cross-border ecosystem of entities, websites, and business narratives around market entry, distribution, brand development, events, technology, and expansion in Asia. One recurring name in the reviewed public record is Lahong Lin, also referred to publicly in some contexts as Elena Lin. The name matters only because it appears in connection with formal or public-facing records that help explain the broader structure. Stay with me until the end, because the final part connects the record in a way that makes the wider accountability question much harder to ignore. One public corporate data point is this. In Florida, Miasia Group LLC is listed as an active company, and the public filing names Lahong Lin as its authorized member. That matters because this is not simply branding language. It is a formal public corporate record tied to a registered entity in the United States. At the same time, the Miasia Group website presents a business active across Singapore, the United States, and Vietnam. It describes activities connected to distribution, exhibitions, technology, brand development, and property investment. That is where the structure becomes more relevant, because when the public-facing websites of LLMH Group and Miasia Group are compared, the overlap is significant. The two websites appear to share a very similar navigation structure. They appear to use the same or highly similar Working with Us section. They appear to use the same Bring Your Brand to the Asia callout. They show similar footer architecture, and they use highly similar service descriptions around distribution, exhibitions, technology, brand development, and market access. This does not, by itself, prove misconduct. It does not prove that every entity has the same legal role. And it does not prove that every public-facing asset is false. But it does suggest that the reviewed websites may be part of a coordinated public-facing presentation structure. And that matters because the more closely this structure is inspected, the more the accountability question becomes relevant. For example, the LLMH Group website is live and publicly accessible, but the contact page appears to rely on a generic form-style interface. There is no visible working email address in the page text. There is no meaningful named contact point visible through that page. And in our own attempt to make contact, the previously identified corporate email was no longer valid, while the site contact route was not operational. So the issue is not only what these websites claim, the issue is whether they function as real business interfaces when someone actually tries to reach a responsible person. That question extends beyond one website. What emerges is a wider credibility ecosystem, different company names, different websites, different jurisdictions, but overlapping narratives around market entry, distribution, branding, events, and expansion in Asia. There also appears to be a reputation management layer around parts of that ecosystem. One review-style page for Market Asia presents a verified company profile with positive scoring and a link to write a review. Another review platform, Trust Prisms, presents itself as a consumer review environment with categories, recent reviews, and brand prompts. Again, the point is not to claim that every one of these assets is false. The point is that the public-facing layer appears highly optimized for credibility, but in several instances reviewed, the practical route to accountability appears weak, generic, or ineffective. That is why this can no longer be reduced to one delayed purchase order, one failed reimbursement, or one isolated commercial dispute. The concern now is broader. A recurring cross-border presentation structure, multiple company names, multiple websites, recurring public-facing narratives, formal corporate traces in the United States, substantial overlap in website structure and messaging, and weak contact routes when accountability is actually required. There is one more point that matters. The record also shows that the process was not confined only to anonymous emails or junior-level intermediaries. At a relevant stage of the engagement, a senior LLMH representative, identified in the record as group president, was introduced into the process. That does not, by itself, determine responsibility, but it does show that the matter had visibility beyond a purely marginal or low-level interaction. So where does that leave things now? It leaves us with a documented commercial dispute, a broader public footprint, recurring entities and names across multiple jurisdictions, a formal corporate filing in the United States, significant overlap in public-facing website structure and messaging, and growing reason to question whether this was ever just a simple commercial misunderstanding. At this stage, what is documented in our case, when viewed alongside this wider public footprint, raises a legitimate question. Is this only an isolated dispute? Or is it part of a broader structure that companies should examine carefully before committing funds, signing distribution agreements, or relying on market entry representations? That is the reason for this update. Recovery remains the first objective, but documentation continues because the matter remains unresolved, and broader visibility helps other companies make informed decisions before entering similar cross-border commercial arrangements. This is not escalation for its own sake. This is documentation. This is transparency, and this is what accountability starts to look like when silence is replaced by the public record. Thank you and stay tuned.